In this video, we're going to be talking about elements of a good design. So things that you need to pay attention to come up with a good design. So first of all, we got how elements of an object are linked, transitions, right? So the flow. So basically, I'll show examples in a minute, but it's a transition from one place, section of an object to another in a fluid manner. So there's no kind of like a barrier, visual barrier, or an element in your design that's gonna be obstructing the flow of lines and flow of design. Okay, so smooth transitions between all the parts. Game of lines, this is really important, and it's a quite deep subject. Game of lines, basically it's all about creating a pleasing composition of lines, because lines are exceptionally important in drawing or in design. You got thicker lines, thinner lines, you got implied lines, you got very powerful lines. You need to know how to balance all these in order to create a pleasing composition and also sell the idea behind your project. Light breaking and angle shifts. This is essential. It's basically plane shifts and line breaks, okay? So when you have an object, for example, like this, right? You see this plane shift here at this angle. So there's a straight cut here going down. There's a slight plane shift in here, okay? And you got this light breaking in this area, okay? You got plane shifts on bevels, you got plane shifts here. There's a lot of plane shifts in this design, okay? So it's a very simple design, but there's a lot of plane shifts. And they create shadows and highlights and foams. So plane shift and light breaking is exceptionally important, yeah? So you need to introduce an interesting composition of angle shifts in your design. Negative space and balance. Well, we talked about it in previous videos, but basically it's you can simplify this to thinking that it's an outline of your model. So is it pleasing? Okay, is the thing that you're trying to to sell pleasing to look at? Is the outline pleasing in the render? Okay, is it the negative space around an object? Is it creating an interesting silhouette? So what you can do is bring your object to or render to Photoshop, remove the background and look just at the silhouette, okay, and see if it's actually creating a pleasing composition. Like this is, in my opinion, a very strong composition, okay, this image, right? It's a very strong angle supported by these two texts on the bottom, beautiful negative space, and a really nice balance, very nice cropping. This is a powerful image, okay? Could be a little bit more contrasty because it's the light is very soft, but that was the look I was going for, right? But you need to learn how to see the outline of an object and sort of determine very quickly whether it's actually fitting the frame very well or not. To change how negative space looks, simply move your camera or your object in a frame and see how other angles or maybe other other crops will look, okay? A negative space is exceptionally important, okay, when you want to present your design, because design is not just what you created, but also how you present it. Now, in terms of just an object, you need to create something that looks pleasing from literally any angle. So I can load this robotic arm and show you, okay, what I mean. So let's turn the not shadows, cavity on. There we go. And you can look from any really angle, okay, right? Any angle, and it's gonna look really interesting. It looks like a raptor or like a kind of like a, I don't know, angry prehistorical bird without wings, right? So any angle, really, you look at it, it looks good, okay, it looks balanced. Doesn't matter if it's in orthographic or perspective, it doesn't matter, okay? So this is a good design, okay, when it actually looks decent from an angle, which means negative space around it creates a very pleasing form, okay? So the design is well balanced. And then of course you need to talk about elements within your design. So for example, details, cuts, lines, etc. But the outline of it is also important, okay? And that's what this negative space and shape and balance is, all right? Anchor points and leading lines, okay? So this is connected to the game of lines. So let's talk about it, all right? Do you see, for example, the placement of lights here, right, on the front, here, here, these two on the bottom, then two here, here, and here, and then here and three here. It leads you around the object. Doesn't matter where you look at it, okay? Which angle you look at it from, you will see lighting leading you around, okay? Right? Around the object, you see? Here, all around, leads you around the object. And these are very tiny lights, but they warm enough and punchy enough to actually pull your attention gently, but they're not overpowering. And these are anchors. Another type of anchors would be these massive cuts, okay? And they imply sections of this vehicle, okay? Another anchor would be, for example, these massive cutouts. Anchor is anything that's gonna grab your eye, okay? That's gonna catch your eye, right? And pull your eye somewhere. The text is gonna be an anchor because we always want to read stuff. So when you, for example, place text on your vessel, I have one here, 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 and one on the bottom here, right? You want to lead, the eyes with the text all around the design. This can be also a very powerful anchor. Another anchor could be a cluster of details. So there are different types of anchors, right? This is a cluster of details, okay? In the front, okay, you got pretty strong cluster of details, right? All right, and then you got anchors within an anchor. So you got the cluster of details, and then you got these lights pulling around, or smaller islands of details, okay? Like, for example, here, then you got here, here, and on the top, and then here, and on the top, etc., right? So then you got this, how well elements are linked and the flow, and it also relates to detail distribution, flow, and of the form and composition. They're all linked, yeah? So, for example, you got these massive empty spaces, which will allow your eyes to glide through the design to another island, okay? It's like swimming, from an island to an island in the sea or something, okay? Or jumping from one place to another, okay? It's from island to island, and you're just gonna glide along, the lines. And you need to create lines or certain, for example, sections, or use any other elements that's going to allow you to link, them together, right? Like, for example, you're going to flow in here, then you're going to go up to this island of details, you're going to flow down through the lights, go down through these powerful lines to the bottom, and then you're going to go here, and either go here this way, or you're going to go down to the gun, right? And then going to go back up here, and this way all around, right? So you're guiding people through your design, okay, using anchors, lines, and transitional elements in all these empty spaces, because eyes gonna glide through them. If there's a lot of elements in here, you just don't know, you wouldn't know where to look. Your brain would get overloaded, right? You'll get tired looking at this shit. So don't slap details everywhere. Look how I place details, okay? There are cluster of details to create visual anchors, right? And they're in very specific places. Like, look, for example, how detail is placed here along the lines, right? They're not somewhere in the middle. They're just, in specific places to pull your attention but not overwhelm you. And that's an element of a decent design, yeah? Let's talk about light and contrast, value of elements, and their symbiosis. Well, light and contrast, right, gonna be created by a form. So you see there is a shadow here, there's a contrast, and there is a shift of light here because there's a plane shift, right? So you got this light breakage, okay? So you got darker here, brighter here, then you got this contrast again here and strong line, and again plane of different type of lighting. Then you got the shift, okay? So it's all about creating interesting angles and plane shifts, which will create contrast in your image, but they need to be symbiotic, which means they need to work together very well. And for this, you can, for example, use cohesion. So, for instance, you can see that these diagonal lines are going at the same angle, and that was done on purpose, okay, to create a bond between different sections of this plane or ship, right, and make it look cohesive, okay, make it look, so it makes sense, basically. So even the wings here are on a very similar or the same angle as, as this, right? All these cuts are opposing angles of these angles. So if you move this wing, right, if you move this wing around, right, and rotated it, it will be the same angle, okay? And of course, for example, like when you have a shallower angles here, it's going to be repeated in here, here, okay, to create this continuity. And the same here, you got a very shallow angle opening. See, like there's like an opening, like a jaw created by angles, sort of going outwards from this beak from the front to the wings, kind of like inviting you to just kind of glide around and then come back, focus, and boom, go around again. See what I mean? So all these lines, they have purpose, right? They're not accidental. It's just the way I decided to design this vessel. Balance of lines and the symbiosis of lines, and then creating a different value. And by value, I mean darker and brighter spots in your design. You need to create a balance between all these elements, okay? So the best way to do that is to simply look at your design and think whether there is a pleasing composition in terms of light and shadows. Guys, it takes time. It's not going to happen on the first day, but this is why I told you to look at very good art, because that's how you're going to grow, okay? Don't look at shit art, look at good art. Look at art that's intimidating. It's on the level that's actually intimidating. You're thinking like, shit, I'm never going to be that level. That's the art you want to look at. Because this is so far off that, you know, you just cannot even comprehend how someone can create something like this, okay? And that's the level you want to soak the information from, okay? So detailed distribution and flow of the form and composition, and then we're gonna talk about functionality and references. Okay, so for example, this vessel, someone could ask, well, how the fuck do you land this shit, right? Well, it's not landable, it's actually dockable. This ship only docks, and that's it, right? This is why I created this. But sometimes, okay, you need to think in terms of designing, not a prototype, but designing a concept, right? And the concept doesn't have to be always fully rational, okay? That's important. It has to be functional to a point, but doesn't have to be fully rational. It's not a coffee maker, it's a concept art, okay? So you can go crazy a little bit, which is why I went crazy a little bit with this, you know, bottom fin. And I think it looks fucking awesome, right? And then you just make a story. It's fucking dockable. Prove me wrong, it's sci-fi. Anything is possible, right? But there is, you know, there is a point where your design becomes ridiculous, and you know, you know that you're going a bit too far. So you need to know where to stop, okay? So you need to make something that looks believable to the eye. So even if it's sci-fi, your brain needs to tell you that this is possible. This could actually fly, right? Or this could actually, I don't know, be, you know, driven underwater or something. I don't care, but you need to kind of look at this like, shit, yeah, this looks like a ship, okay? This could fly. And that's, you know, that's your goal, okay? So if you're creating a gun, well, make sure it looks like a gun. Like, for example, you know, this design here, I made quite recently for our Patreon. You know, that looks like a gun, right? It looks like you could just grab it and shoot it. Doesn't matter if this is believable, or doesn't matter how this gun shoots, what kind of, you know, what kind of ammunition using, if it's electric, is it pulse gun, is it plasma gun? It doesn't matter. Maybe these are some super powerful conductors creating energy pulse from this gun, you know. Prove me wrong, it's sci-fi, anything is possible. But it looks believable when you look at it from the first, you know, for the first time, right? Very often I can see designs which look believable from a distance, but when you look closely, there are elements missing. Like, for example, spokes of a car are not being connected to the chassis. But from a distance, when you look at the mechanical design, it makes sense. And this is the point. The point of, for example, designing for games or for designing concept art is to make it look believable, to cheat the brain, to take the brain that, you know, that is possible, and that's your job. Unless you're a practical designer, you're designing stuff for, you know, I don't know, you know, for companies that produce coffee makers, well, that's different. Then you need to really follow the proportions, the schematics, whatever. And the design is just a shell. So the aesthetic shell, but in this case, everything is an aesthetic shell, okay? So it's a bit different, right? But, like I said, it needs to be really believable. So, functionality and references. So why references? Well, when you work, for example, something mechanical, okay? Let's say you're working on a hinge, or for example, a lock. Look up some real references, real life references. Or you're working, for example, on a piston for a car. Look up real references of pistons. You can create your own design, but look how they mechanically work. So when you create something, it actually makes sense, right? So when I was creating, for example, one of these mechs, Well, let's say this one, right? You know, I was trying to make the joints in a way that they make sense. So for example, the leg could spin forward, but it also could spin outwards. Yeah, because you know, if you want this mech to walk, this joint needs to move in almost any direction. So you can see clearly here that it can. Same with the feet. If you look at the feet can go, you know, left and right, and also back and forth, right? So you see there's a double joint in here. So I try to make, you know, I try to make it believable. So when you look at it, your brain tells you, well, yeah, this could work. Doesn't have to have necessarily like all the clearance, right? All it matters is that your brain tells you, yeah, this is possible. You see what I mean? All right. So that's why you need references. Textures, patterns, and colors. This is freaking important, guys. Okay. So in my case, let's take this one for example. Okay. You can create a design just using colors. So for instance, here you can see that there's a dominant color is white, right? Like a white silver, but there's also a color inside here, dark one, and it's only maybe like 30% of it, so it's 70-30, right? So I added accents, okay, which are also visual anchors, by the way, leading you through the design. It's here, 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 and here, right? They're not dominant, they just, you know, they're just accents. The dominant color is the one that fills the whole structure, so the white silver, okay? That's the dominant color. This is an accent color, this is the 30% color. And then you got very strong visual anchors, like for example, these holes in here, which will lead you around the design, and they have a similar color, the dark one, right? So this is really important to know how to work with colors in your design, or textures, so you can create a pleasing composition in terms of balance of tones and textures and colors on your models. Like the same here, you see the bottom is all dark, and there's dark top and dark back and dark engines, but everything else, and dark mounting for the car for the guns, but the wings, except for the flaps and the top here, it's all silver to create an accent, right? And that's designing with. So I didn't slap these colors willy-nilly. I spent like, you know, good few minutes thinking which one should be what, and try different arrangements, because colors will affect the way your model looks by a ton. Okay, so you need to really think how to balance your colors and textures. Very important. All right. So sometimes when you design something, you know, you can think how to cut it. This one is not very visible here because the colors are so close, but you can also see there are two different colors, or three, right? You know, so it's all about creating a balance in your, you know, in your model. The same is here, okay? Same thing. That was all designed on purpose. You see, there's a flow of this white going around here, and then you got this gray, right? And then the rhythm in proportions. This is really general, but basically it refers to all these things above, okay? So proportions, I mean, things have to be proportional, right? So for example, if I made this trigger too small, it would not look believable because it wouldn't fit the hand. You need to make sure that proportions are correct. So it's a very good thing, for example, when you're designing stuff like, you know, like let's say buildings, that you actually use humans as a reference, because then you can maintain proper proportions of everything inside and outside, stairs, entrance, doorknobs, the height of the lock. It needs to be proper. See, the height of the lock is literally on you know, on the correct level, right? Then you got, you know, all these vents, etc., and you know, the ceiling height, everything needs to match, okay? When I was designing this thing, where is this one, right? I also needed to think about proportions, because I needed to put a, you know, this bot over there, right? So I need to think about proportions for this, you know, for this hovercraft, right? And then the rhythm. Rhythm is basically everything above in harmony. That's what it means, rhythm. Okay, so rhythm of lines, rhythm of shadows, rhythm of the negative space. Okay, rhythm of anchors. You got visual anchors here, 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 right here. These two, because they stand out. There's like a line leading you through it. Boom, an anchor on the front, right? So there's a harmony. There needs to be a harmony of lines, of angles, of colors, of everything. So design is not an easy thing to do, okay? It's a difficult task, but when you're aware of all these elements, you can start looking at your design with a critical eye and try to improve it. And always compare your design to someone who is way better than you, okay? So, look at the top dogs of the industry. People who work, for example, on Star Citizen, people who work on movies like Rogue One, people who work for, like this guy I showed you in one of these videos. So look at people like, Thor Frick, for example, this guy. And I mean, his design is, something else, man. It's off the chain, right? So, and then look at people who, look at anyone who he's following and see if you like, because, you don't have to follow everyone, right? You don't have to think that even if someone is really good, doesn't mean that you have to follow him, okay? Follow people who you think are good, okay? And then they create something that you like. Because if you look at some design that you're not really interested in, like let's say, I don't know, if you're a hardcore hard surface modeler, you might not be interested in alien organic forms. Although they could be educational, but you might think, well, I don't really care, okay? But try to follow people who are really good and they kind of design in the same genre as you do, right? And like for example, for me, sci-fi school, but like this kind of a design is not really within my interest much. I mean, I do appreciate the quality of it, but I don't like these kind of like a very flowy, blobby designs. Yeah, not my thing. However, this guy's exceptional, right? But if this is your thing, there you go, But if you like something a bit more angular, go for example, people like Edon Gorazio, right? Or people like Gary Sanchez, right? I mean, this kind of stuff. There you go, right? So this is more of what I like. Okay, more angular, more clean cut, kind of like a shaven metal. That's what I like. Okay, yeah. So there you go. Follow the good guys. Yeah, this will teach you how to maintain rhythm in your work and proportions, because these guys are pretty good at that. Okay, so again, one more time, make sure that you're gonna follow all these principles. Read on design. Keep researching and gather references, because references are everything. If you start gathering references, start looking at really good design, look at how they create form transitions, how the light breaks and why they put details, where they put text, how the main line flow, what's the outline of this thing, okay? How does it look? What's the negative space, okay? Don't take everything as gospel. I mean, there are things in this, not design, but in this render that maybe I would do differently. For example, I think that this highlight here is really strong, okay? So this is a reflection I was talking about. This is something you need to be careful about, because this is going to pull attention, and this is going to pull attention, and technically most of this render is kind of in darkness, right? You got some of a light transition here on his name, which is kind of cool, but this is the strongest element in the image, and there's no detail in here. So for me, this is not the best idea, but the design is just, mind-blowing, right? Another one is here that, you can see shadows. It's just a model dropped in a background, right? So it's a shame, because, the model is great. It's just incredible, right? Theoretically, this is close to how it would look like, but the shadows are too deep, okay? Shadows are a bit too deep. You can't see the detail. So in this case, for example, I would use a reflector or lift the shadows in post, okay? Remove this reflection here from the windshield, because this looks, kind of weird as well. So there are things that, you can soak in and improve on, but there's, some things that you need to be aware of. So, don't take everything as gospel, right? But in terms of design, this is incredible, right? There's a lot of examples here of, exceptional stuff going on. I mean, this bot is just fucking nuts, incredible. And these renders are actually really good, by the way. This is a really good render, right? Very good lighting, beautiful detail, showcasing. This is also great. This is kind of like a rim lighting rendering, right? Very beautiful render, this one. But this one is exceptionally dark, you see. This one is too dark, in my opinion. The levels on this one are really low. If you're gonna bring this into Photoshop, right? Okay, so look at the histogram. Most of it is just clipped, right? See, this half is basically the second half of the midtones and highlights is non-existent. So this is way too dark, okay? This should be possibly, right? See that? This is all underexposed, all these black areas, right? So this should be way brighter, okay? Way brighter, right? It's gonna be washed out, but see, that looks much better, you see what I mean? So if I compare them, you know, before and after, you see what I mean? Yeah. But you should definitely look up to, you know, to people like Edon in terms of design, because, you know, this shit is just off the hook. And then check who he's following, because he's probably following a lot of people who, you know, who know what they're talking about, right? And click on some random stuff and see if you like it or not. And if you like it, just follow them, you know? I mean, this is a really cool design too. It's much simpler than add-ons, but it's, you know, it's a good design. And also very consistent renders. This is another thing that we can talk about in terms of design, right? When you create a portfolio, make sure that your portfolio is going to be consistent in terms of style, okay? So when someone sees your stuff, they're going to know who made it, okay? So as long as you're original and you create some kind of like a theme, for example, color theme or lighting theme, like when you look at my renders at glance, you can see that the lighting is quite similar, and also the editing and toning is quite similar, texturing is similar, so you can kind of see, with few exceptions, that this was done by one person, right? The same person. And that's what you want to you know, strive for. You want to have your style being recognized at some point, that, you know, people will look at an image, they don't have to check who made it, they will know, right? So that's what you want to develop. But before you're going to be able to develop your own style of design, you will need to learn a lot about design, about, you know, soak in all that knowledge and practice, and eventually you're going to be able to create, you know, naturally. It's going to evolve naturally. Your style is going to just appear naturally in your art. Just like, you know, what happened to I don't know if I have a recognizable style in 3D yet, but, you know, I've been doing portraiture for so long, and that I definitely, you can see that there's a great consistency in terms of style throughout all these images, and they've been taken throughout, you know, many years. So I just have a consistent style with my portraiture, and this is what you want, because clients gonna look at your portfolio and they will think, oh shit, I like this guy, that's what I want, and they will know what to expect. So when you have a portfolio full of random shit, this is not a good idea, because the client doesn't really know if they're going to ask you to create object A, what they're going to receive. So they're going to get confusing message looking from your looking at your portfolio. So don't try to be everyone. Try to specialize in certain thing and be good at, you know, the thing that you excel at. Okay, so just focus on something and follow some path. Of course you can experiment, that's okay, but what I'm saying, try to, you know, try to achieve some sort of consistency in terms of design. Yeah, if you look at work of Gary Sanchez, I mean, you know, some of this stuff is insane. He has like a one track, this one, I mean, this is fucking incredible. I think this design is just gorgeous. Look at the silhouette of this motherfucker. That is what I call a freaking awesome design. I think this is one of my most favorite off-road trucks, like sci-fi trucks I've ever seen. So you want to look up to people like this, you know, that's where you want to look up to, okay? To learn how to design really cool shit. Alright guys, I think that's it about the design. Hope you enjoyed the vid. Catch you in the next one.